Hey everyone, this is Andy, better known as Love Retro BTW on Twitter X, Threads, IG, and Cafe BTW on TikTok and YouTube. A quick update that the Cafe BTW podcast is taking a very long hiatus, but I still have something really amazing to share with you. We have a fantastic retro gaming community on Twitter X where we've crossed well over 2,000 passionate members. And if you're a lover of retro gaming, this is the perfect place to share your content, showcase your pickups, or just chat about your favorite old school games. To dive into nostalgia and become a part of the thriving community, click in the show notes on the Cafe BTW link tree or go right to my Twitter X profile on Love Retro BTW. And now, without further ado, gear up for another sensational episode of the Gamers Week podcast.
Coming up on Gamers Week podcast.
I don't know what that would be. I do remember Porn Tetris back with like many moons ago.
I do too.
Oh yeah, that was a whole flash
Porn
game.
Tetris is a thing?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I gotta look this up.
You actually don't have to. It's fine. Let your imagination run wild. You don't have to.
I don't want to.
Listen, follow your dreams, but I'm just telling you right now, there is no need.
Hey, I do not hold you responsible for whatever I may or may not see. Valentine's Day is great, though, if you wait tables.
Oh, I'm sure it's just an absolute blast. I mean, everything, again, is a set menu and nobody's tipping. Wonderful. Congratulations.
But the conversations you must be privy to as a waiter or a waitress on Valentine's Day, I mean, all the stuff is going through my head. Some of it I probably can't even mention on this podcast. But yeah, Blue, do you have anything that you would like to share that from your time as being a waitress?
One thing that does stick out to mind is waiting on this couple. They were very touchy-feely throughout dinner and lots of whispering to each other. And then when they left, I noticed there was a condom in a wrapper on the table.
Oh,
and I was like, uh-oh. I hope you got an extra in your wallet there, bud, because otherwise the night is going to come to a screeching halt.
It's going to turn into like a comedy sketch, like, where's my condom? Like, just kind of searching every pocket. Can we just like drive back to...
You go back to the restaurant and it's not like, oh, I left my wallet. Did somebody turn it in? It's like, I left my condom. Did somebody turn my condom in?
It's like, no, we just threw it away.
Right.
No, you insane person. Why don't you just go to the store and get another one? What's wrong with you?
Can I let me just use this saran wrap or this little plastic baggie? I improvise. I'm like MacGyver.
Do you have any party balloons left over from last week? You can just use those.
The long ones. Better be the long ones that the clown makes. With,
your biggest party balloon, please.
Save it for the uncut.
Right. We'll have to pick up that topic again. Condom substitutes. I like it.
So that's a good cold open.
I think so.
Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says, we analyze the best, worst, and weirdest headlines of the past week in the video game industry. This is episode 110, and today is Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. Ooh, I wanna sex you up. Yes, it's Valentine's Day. My name is Donnie T. Retro, and I will be your host this evening. But as you can hear those little evil chuckles, I am not alone. My first co-host, unfortunately, is currently in the 5th round of a 10-round Valentine's Day death match with Death himself. She's putting up a hell of a fight. You know her. You love her. Writer's View, a.k.a. Blue Williams. Blue, how are you this evening?
I'm still here. Death is trying their best. You make it sound like the end of a round of Vampire Survivors.
I've never played that, so I don't have a frame of reference.
Okay, because the Reaper comes for you at the end of the round.
He comes for us all.
It's a metaphor, I guess.
However you want to look at it.
You're right.
My second co-host is almost done with his hiatus of his own podcast. You know him as Bill Tucker. He is A Gamer Looks at 40 from A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast. Bill, how are you doing this evening?
Good. Thank you. I am not knocking on death's door, although,
Lucky.
Yeah, I mean, lucky me. I know. And I can say Vampire Survivors, you should just play that, Donnie. Make that the next thing you do. Before you even edit this podcast, just make that happen.
I think you should help edit first.
Right.
Yeah, because then you'll never get out. No, super glad to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, no problem. You were previously on episode 78. Would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, so my podcast, A Gamer Looks at 40, is kind of a retrospective history of video games as told through the stories and lived experiences of everyday people who lived it. It kind of tries to get to the heart and soul of video games as a medium as opposed to nuts and bolts. And every episode or mainline episode could be up to 12 different people sharing stories about a particular game or series. And it's a hoot. And I am rather fond of it, and I hope you would be too. So definitely check it out. I have a brandy new website, agamerlooksat4040.com. It makes it so easy just to tell people, go there. All the stuff is now there. So check it out if you dig retro games, and I hope you enjoy it.
And you did just get a logo update, if I'm correct.
Yes, my logo got its hair did. I was very, very pleased. Shout out to my best friend since third grade, Joey Coro, who did the logo. And he gave it a little facelift, made it a little easier to read on the pod players. And I'm actually going through all 100 and change episodes now and giving episode art. I had no idea you could actually do episode art as well as your main podcast art. So now I'm going through and replacing artwork. So right now I'm in the process of recording for the next series, which I'll talk about probably a little later, and then just doing some facelifting for the big reveal or the big return on March 4th.
Awesome, which is less than a month away, so we definitely can't wait for that.
Yes.
All right, let's go ahead and look at our reviews, reactions, and requests for the week. At Retro Gaming Dev says, go listen to Gamers Week and follow them. They rock.
Thank you, Nate.
Thank you, Retro Nate. At Darkwing J says, everyone give Gamers Week a follow and listen too. It's a really enjoyable show. Thank you, Darkwing J.
All this love on today. Valentine's Day.
Right? You
Very
would think.
applicable. And at Frank Grande 3 says, great job on the VIP, Zach. Huge thanks. I knew what it was right away and enjoyed it a lot.
It was a really, really good one. That was very, very good. I caught it right away, too. It didn't take long. And now it's time for the... So I'm coming from a bank job in Secaucus. I'm in the middle of the weeds lying down when this cop comes up and says, oh, what are you doing? And I say, I'm resting. He says, I got a beach, I got a bar, you here resting? I says, yeah, I'm resting. What do you want from me? I tell you. So he brings me downtown, starts asking me about a very important poll. Something about blowing into video games. I don't know, whatever. So he says, you got an answer for me, tough guy? So I says, no, but I got a poll for you. Yeah, how about I got a poll for you right here? Bang, pow, boom. Donnie, you saw my head? It was out to here, right? Whatever, it happens. So I'm coming around, and what do I see? But there's a big jerk standing in front of me. And he says, what do you want to tell me now there, tough guy? I says, oh, Bing, what are you doing here? I told you to sit on that very important pole.
It's a good one, Tommy.
You're a funny guy. wait, what do you mean funny?
Yeah, nothing. Just, the way you tell the story. You're a funny guy.
Wait, but funny how?
Oh, Tommy, relax. I think you got it all wrong.
No, Anthony. He's a big boy. He knows what he said. Funny how?
No, what do you mean? The way you told us the story. What?
I don't know. Maybe you give me a minute. I'm all messed up in the head. But you're funny how? Like I'm a clown? Like I amuse you? I make you laugh? I'm a big joke? Funny how? You tell me how I'm funny. Tell me. Dying to know. Tell me, how am I funny?
Tommy, get out of here. You gotta stop.
I almost had him. Yeah, matter instead of a jerk, you. Be careful, Henry. You may fold under questioning. You have no idea how hard that was to do without cursing constantly. Just nonstop profanity. Okay, I'm just saying, it was tough. It was a challenge.
I'm impressed on so many levels, Bill. That was great.
Oh, thank you very much.
You do that accent so well.
Yeah, it's like you're a natural at it.
I grew up in northern New Jersey, so for me, a Joe Pesci is a very and so that can't be stereotypical. That's literally the world I grew up in. So I just channeled my past, living in Bloomfield, New Jersey, in Essex County.
Bill's second language is Joe Pesci.
We should all be able to speak Joe Pesci.
I took a class in high school, but I don't remember much.
Yeah, I had the choice between Latin, Spanish, and Pesci, and clearly Pesci won out.
Latin, Spanish, and Pesci. Sounds like a law firm.
Every Monday on Twitter, we post our VIP, very important poll. If you'd like to participate, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. This week's question was, in your opinion, who is the best voice actor in video game history? Roger Craig Smith came in with 7.8% of the vote. Jennifer Hale came in at 26.7% of the vote. Troy Baker came in at the lead with 37.9% of the vote. And then 27.7% of you said other. Let's take a look at some of the comments from the poll. At Console Gamer says, Kevin Conroy. Yes, he mainly played Batman, but his portrayal is the absolute best. Yeah, I have to agree with that.
It's kind of hard to say it's not Kevin Conroy.
Agreed. At JDog76 writes, David Hayter, a.k.a. Snake! Of course. An absolute classic. My buddy Blair Cade writes, Steve Bloom, if just for Wolverine alone. I don't know this one. I don't know this reference.
Wolverine and the X-Men, 2009 American animated series, and I guess he was the voice of Wolverine in it. Didn't know that.
Well, we all have to take a look at that then. Simon Ashter says, how many games are known for narration? Bastion, Senua, that Chatterbox, Gordon Freeman. But if there's a voice I want to hear more, it's Max Payne. Sadly, the voice actor James McCaffrey passed away in December. Max's long journey into the night is concluded. Awesome pick, Simon. Max Payne is such a good voice actor. That's a really good pick.
Yeah, it's too bad Ryan's not here to rage silently about it.
Why would he rage silently about it? Is he anti-Max Payne?
He is anti-Max Payne because his last name is Payne.
Okay. I was going to say, is he anti-fun? Because Max Payne is so fun. But I can see why. Now that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's a him issue.
It's totally a him issue. And then at Clayman71, Gary Owens in Space Quest 4. His narration made that game incredible and will be in my head forever. And come on, he was Powdered Toast Man. Cling tenaciously to my buttocks. And you can just clip that, me saying cling tenaciously to my buttocks, and you can have that forever if you like.
That's going to be my ringtone.
Yeah, thank you. We will definitely keep that.
You have my permission. So, Donnie Blue, what was your favorite voice actor?
This is a very loaded question. The best voice actor, like you said, you've got people like Kevin Conroy, you've got David Hayter, who is the voice of Snake. Do you go with somebody who perfected a certain character for the duration of their career, like David Hayter and Kevin Conroy? Or do you go with somebody who is more versatile, like Steve Blum or Jennifer Hale? It's kind of a tough choice. I started to go with David Hayter, but then I was like, well, really, the only thing he's known for is Snake, and that's it. And then I wanted to go with Kevin Conroy. But again, the only thing he's really known for is Batman. And there are tons of other voice actors out there who have voiced many different characters in many different games. So for me, I'm going to take the weasel way out this week and say I don't really have a best voice actor because they're all just so damn good.
He's pulling a Donnie this week.
I'm pulling a Donnie.
What about you, Blue?
So I am going to narrow it down to two. I couldn't decide between Laura Bailey, who has been in Last of Us, Uncharted, Halo, Fire Emblem, Elder Scrolls, Final Fantasy, Persona, or Ashley Birch, who has been best well known for playing Aloy in Horizon Zero Dawn, but she's also been in Borderlands, Valorant, Fortnite, Fallout, Outer Worlds. So I think between those two ladies, you have two incredible catalogs to choose from, and I couldn't do it. So those two are both my choice.
So you're going to give me crap for not being able to pinpoint one, and yet you can't even do the same thing. You're giving us 2.
No, it's not quite the same because I gave 2 and you said all of them.
And it's blue, Donnie. Come on, really? Do you expect,
no.
any grace at all? Any fairity in this relationship? You've been doing this for how long now? Come on.
She doesn't get off that easily.
Phrasing. What about you, Bill?
I actually, because I just last night I was watching Josh of the Still Loading podcast. He was streaming the end of Horizon Zero Dawn, and Ashley Burch was my pick because I forgot how good she is in that role. She elevates every scene she's in. Even dialogue that would be corny or ham-fisted comes out perfectly when she delivers it. She is ridiculously good in that role. Mm-hmm. So I had Ashley Burch as my pick for this one.
See, they're all good. All good choices.
They're not all good choices.
Okay, fine. Who is like a bad voice actor?
We did this poll before. We were like, what's the worst voice acting? Is it like Resident Evil or is it...
That's dialogue.
It's not the CDI game. No, the voice acting is bad too.
Okay. All right. I'll stand down. I'll stand down on this one.
I would say maybe anybody who's not the female in Heavy Rain. They're all bad. Oh boy.
Ooh,
that's not good.
Jason!
Don't get me started on David Crane. Nope. It's not a fan. Not a fan of that gentleman's work.
All right, now let's move on to our patron shoutouts.
We couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. Number 1, Blue Sick Voice Fan, John Barron, Sassy Sony, Evo Lust, Rai Secret Best Friend, Mega Retroman, Gamatroid, Mora Deeb, Michael LeKite, Emo-esque, Bill Tucker, hey. The Real Retro Game Brews, Fruitcakes Pickled Pepper, Ducks with Thick Thighs, Wizard of Zardoz, Bots and Dugnut, Loudmouth, Retro Blast Pat, Great Siaman 81, B&T Zilla Guy, The Mad Milkman, Seven Castle Forest, Crunchy Kong, Sheriff Snacks, Frank Grande, Love Retro BTW, Steven Sand, Ramboski, Terry Kinnair, Doongie Forever, Ducks in Disguise, Don't Make Me Pull Over This Car, Games with Coffee, Hybrid Divide, Matto 1606, You Fall Before Me, Davey PGH, The Red Ox PDX family, including Shannon and Luke, and Zach. Huge thanks. If you like what you hear today, and we really hope you do, please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the cost of producing the show, as well as other cool stuff we'll be doing, like prizes and giveaways. You'll also gain access to our weekly patron-only bonus cast called Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. Visit patreon.com/gamersweek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
What I find funny is that the first patron this week is number 1 Blue Sick Voice Fan, and you're sick.
Yes. They must be so happy right now.
They're probably just loving life. And I love the fact you have a patron by the name of Don't Make Me Pull Over This Car. I've never used that threat as a dad because I know in my heart of hearts, I just need to get where I'm going. And the best solution is to just go and not stop.
Yeah, everything will be better once you arrive.
Everything's better when you arrive. It's not a threat worth carrying out. I love that name. So well played. Don't make me pull over this car.
And now let's take a look at our headlines for the week. Our headline segment is proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic family-friendly retro gaming podcast. In each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they want to know, what is your experience with the PC FX? Never heard of it? Let them know. They'd also like to hear about TurboGrafx 16 and PC Engine stuff. Send your answers to email at retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes. And before we get into the headlines, the Wednesday curse strikes again. This Thursday, as in tomorrow at the time of the recording, Xbox boss Phil Spencer,
Drink,
Xbox president Sarah Bond, and Xbox president of game content and studios Matt Booty will be going on a special edition of the official Xbox podcast to discuss the business update, air quotes, to the future of Xbox that Spencer teased last week on Twitter. So depending on what it ends up being, we'll potentially be covering that in next week's show. So what is your guys' experience with the TurboGrafx?
The PC FX? Nada. Never heard of it.
Yeah, never heard of PCFX either. I had a friend who had a TurboGrafx 16 only because he collected systems even at an earlier age. Like he was like 15 or 16 when he picked up a TurboGrafx 16, probably for like $5. And I remember playing it. Yeah, my friend Joey, who redid my logo, has been collecting systems. He never got rid of his systems and collected them at the right times when people were just throwing them out the windows. So he has a really great collection that he didn't pay an arm or a leg for, and he zealously holds on to said collection. I remember playing it once or twice and being like, "Oh, this is not great," and stomping, and that was the end of it. I think isn't Bonk a TurboGrafx 16?
Yes.
Property. That's the main thing I remember was Bonk. I was like, "Oh, that's neat." And that was the end of it. So
it was very new. It was very interesting with game cards instead of cartridges. And the graphics were pretty good. The sound was great. It just, I don't know. When you put a game system like that up against a Sega Genesis or a Super Nintendo, to me, it just kind of, we already have this. We already have this in the Super Nintendo. We already have this in the Sega Genesis. We already have this at home. So why do we need this other unique little thing that costs $500? I don't know.
I never saw one my whole life. They're like, you would see an ad maybe in a magazine every once in a while, but it was this far off, unattainable thing. And if I had to guess why it didn't catch off, it would be that, you could only get them in like California and New York. And it didn't have the first party titles to get the attention of kids the way that Sega and Nintendo did.
You have these other games like Bonk. Okay. Like we have our mascots like Sonic and Mario and everything, and TurboGrafx or NEC has Bonk or Splatterhouse. You're like, oh, a cool looking Jason dude. But is that really enough to get people to go out and buy your system? It's all of these different games that they have to take a chance on. And once they go out and buy them, they're like, this wasn't that great.
It was fine. But yeah, let's go play Super Mario World for like the 800th time.
Exactly.
Exactly. From Forbes, new study shows more gamers than ever identify as LGBTQ, but representation lags behind. A first-of-its-kind report on the state of LGBTQ inclusion in the video game industry has revealed that even though more gamers than ever identify as gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, representation of LGBTQ people in game characters and storylines is still significantly lacking, despite what experts say is a legitimate financial reason to be more inclusive. GLAAD, a nonprofit LGBTQ advocacy group, on Tuesday released its first ever inclusion report with Nielsen Games that shows 17% of gamers aged 13 to 55 identify as LGBTQ, up significantly from the 10% who said the same in a 2020 Nielsen report, and much higher than the 7.1% of American adults who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, according to a 2022 Gallup poll. That number is poised to increase in the coming years, the study says, as a significantly higher 23% to 28% of gamers under 35 years old identify as LGBTQ, and almost 1 in 5 members of Generation Z, not just gamers, say they are gay, bisexual, or transgender. However, a majority of games lack LGBTQ characters or storylines, with such inclusive games making up only 2% of Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo's total digital libraries, GLAAD's report says. In the broader context of entertainment, GLAAD found that the gaming industry lags behind that of advertising. 3% of ads viewed in GLAAD's Advertising Visibility Index included LGBTQ representation. Primetime television, 10.6% of scripted series contained an LGBTQ regular in the 2022-23 season, and films from top 10 distributors, 28.5 of which include an LGBTQ character. Catering to an LGBTQ audience would be good for companies, GLAAD argued, citing that queer gamers are 1.4 times more likely to buy or play a game with a character that matches their gender, and 29% of all gamers wish there were more prominent LGBTQ storylines in games, and 70% of LGBTQ gamers, as well as 46% of non-LGBTQ gamers, are less likely to buy a game if it contains harmful tropes or stereotypes about the gay or transgender community. Whew, lots of acronyms and lots of percentage points. But that's a pretty interesting poll. What do you guys, what's your take on that, on the representation within modern games as far as that goes?
My first thought about games being so far behind advertising, movies, and television. It was probably because, well, games take a heck of a lot longer to make, even than movies. If you're investing 6 years now in AAA games, so once it's written, it's hard to make changes on the fly like you could to TV or movies. And times change so fast. Like this even says in 2020, there was 10%, and 4 years later, there's 7%. So a 70% increase in just a couple years. So times are changing incredibly fast. But the other part that I was kind of wondering about this, is this more indicative of less of what people think about LGBTQ, or is it more indicative of how people view gamers? Is it still the traditional, the bros who, I don't want to play a game with somebody's gay in it. I want to play a game that has the chick with hardly any clothes and blah, blah, blah. Right. Like that kind of stereotypical view of gamers. Is that how studios think of us? So they think, well, we can't put LGBTQ characters in the game or it won't sell.
I think that's a very good point. I think that's actually a harsh reality when it comes to video games and gamers. There are those people out there who have that mindset that if you have a gay actor or character or whatever in any type of like show, movie, or even game, they're not going to spend their money on that. So it's a tough decision for the studio heads who have to deal with that kind of stuff. Because, I mean, as the article states, you see somebody that is more like yourself, and any gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or queer person out there who all of a sudden sees a show, a song, a movie, a game that has somebody that represents them, they're going to gravitate towards that. But then you also have the flip side of that coin where the people who don't identify as that, who are very against it, they will throw up protests and everything and do whatever they can to keep that content from going out.
LGBTQ issues and topics resonate a lot with me. It's like a big deal for me. So I'm actually very happy that this came up during my guest spot. The first thing I thought of was, when they do this study, are they including like puzzle games and games that don't have a story? Like I would love to play gay Tetris. I don't know what gay Tetris would be. I'm sure it would be wonderful. I don't know what that would be. I do remember porn Tetris back when, like, many moons ago.
I do too.
Oh yeah, that was a whole flash
porn
game.
Tetris is a thing.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I gotta look this up.
You actually don't have to. It's fine. Let your imagination run wild. You don't need to.
I kind of want to.
Listen, follow your dreams, but I'm just telling you right now, there is no need.
Hey, I do not hold you responsible for whatever I may or may not see.
But my main thought about it was, because that would drive the numbers down, right? Because movies always have a storyline, TVs that have a storyline. Games sometimes just don't have a storyline. Are you including those in those numbers? But even if you don't include those, I think the problem is that the medium is very new, and the people who are writing those stories aren't in the industry yet. Because as this study shows, more and more people are identifying as LGBTQ. And as those people grow up and get into the industry, they're going to want to write the stories that resonate with them. So I think it might be a byproduct. I don't think it's so much as the industry saying, no, no, no. I'm sure there is a lot of that because market research and everything else. But it's interesting that this Forbes article is showing the financial gains for a business. Even if you're just going to follow the dollar, do this, go this route. I just think as games mature, and I could definitely see in the next 20 years as those Gen Zers become more adult and become developers and writers, they're going to create work that resonates with them personally, and you're going to see more of those characters. And what I really don't want to see, though, is companies pandering to a certain set, because the last thing we want is like a Fortnite say, hey, we have a gay Fortnite character and it's a stack of stereotypes and it's really crappy. That would really suck. And I could see cynical corporate types being like, well, hey, how do we get the gay kids into our game, and doing something really crappy like that. So what I really hope is that as we get more and more people in the industry who are writing those stories, that they become very real, and then having a transgender or a gay person or any sexuality, just being a person, living their lives and reacting, and then having the stories develop from those natural personalities. I can't wait to see the stories that are going to come from that, because they're going to be really interesting and good.
And I think the pandering it's a bit of a growing pain, right?
Sure.
Because you look at early representations of minorities, and there was a lot of that stereotype stacked upon and pandering. But as the characterization kind of matures, and like you said, these people becoming more into the industry and writing their stories, eventually it moves behind that. So yeah, we do want to avoid the stereotypes, but I think, they're the shaky first steps of trying to move in the right direction. So at least it is something positive, even if it's not a complete win. And I think Donnie had a good point about, there's always a risk if you put a certain type of person in a game, you might end up upsetting somebody else. And so it's a trade-off. But I do think the Westboro Baptist types are becoming less and less, even though they're loud and obnoxious. I do think their numbers are shrinking where everybody else is growing. So I think this article does make sense when it says it's a financial gain to be had here. And eventually I think the studios and corporations will catch on.
Well, and you also have that generational progression. You have the older generation who were playing video games or whatever, and now they're starting to kind of move away from that. Their beliefs don't really fit in with the LGBTQ. So they're accustomed to a certain game with a certain set of people, and now they're kind of their sun is setting on that. When the Gen Z people are coming in, the younger generation are now bringing what they most identify with and what their day ins and day outs. They put those into these games. So now we're going to start seeing more and more games have this type of content with these types of characters, and that's going to be normal. It's going to be common to see someone from the LGBTQ community inside of your game as a main story character, side story character, what have you. Except for those puzzle games, like Bill said, that just make no sense to really have any type of character or any type of storyline.
I don't know. I looked up Porntress.
Of course you did.
Yes. I didn't play it, but it's like every time you get rid of a line, it reveals a GIF or a short movie behind it. I assume is of the porn variety. So you could say there's characters.
Well, no, there's also there's not just that. There is an actual Porntress with human characters in different positions.
Really? I didn't catch
that.
Yes.
And instead of making lines, you match positions, and then the characters do things in said positions, and then they disappear.
I look at the inferior Porntress.
You see, you could. You know what? Donnie and I, we need to guide you through this.
Your Porntress journey.
Your Porntress journey was flawed.
I'm ready to learn. All right, next up from Game Rant, Silent Hill 2 Remake's poorly received combat trailer is Konami's fault, says Dev. The president of Bloober Team, the Polish developer behind the upcoming and long-awaited Silent Hill 2 remake, has stated that the recent combat trailer was handled by Konami. The video in question debuted during the January 31st PlayStation State of Play showcase and represented the first tangible gameplay footage of the Silent Hill 2 remake that fans have been clamoring for. Unfortunately for both fans and developer Bloober Team, the Silent Hill 2 remake's combat reveal trailer left a sour taste in the mouths of many. Viewers commented on the stiff animations, the lack of any meaningful impact when weapons struck enemies, the plinky sound effects, and even that the shotgun seemed to inflict the same amount of damage as the pistol. While the atmosphere in the trailer appeased some fans, the combat showcased in said combat trailer mostly caused consternation and worry about the state of the remake in general. Bloober Team president Peter Babieno recently spoke with Polish YouTube channel inwesterzy.tv, and though the video has since been removed, Eurogamer Poland had already transcribed some of the developer's statements. Babieno emphasized that the trailer does not accurately reflect the spirit of Silent Hill 2 as it was when originally released in 2001 or in the remake that Bloober Team is working on. Babieno expressed confidence that gamers will have a different reaction when they see real gameplay of the Silent Hill 2 remake. Though Konami seems intent on finally reviving the Silent Hill franchise after over a decade, the recent releases have many fans feeling dubious about what's to come. Silent Hill Ascension premiered on October 2023 to a generally negative reception, and many people dubbed the interactive streaming experience a mere cash grab due to its monetization. Silent Hill: The Short Message also launched to negative reviews despite the fact that it was free and reached over 2 million downloads in less than 2 weeks.
Wow, what a case of the blame game. Imagine if people loved it. They'd be like, yep, all us. We rocked it. We killed it. This thing stinks. Look, we had nothing to do with this. I promise it's going to be better. This is just like the third version of it. There'd be 80 of them. Wow, what a blame shift.
What I see here is the scene from Dumb and Dumber. We are the fan base, the customers, and we got hit with the salt shaker. And we turn around, we're Seabass, we look over, and there's Harry, there's Lloyd, and Lloyd is just pointing at Harry, saying, "Oh no, he's the one that threw it." That's Bloober Team, and that's Konami. Bloober really Team funny. Is totally selling out Konami.
I mean, in their defense, it was a shitty trailer.
Oh, it's terrible. It's really not good.
It's really not good. And it gives a terrible first impression of the game.
Yeah, everything, all the comments in that article were accurate. It's stiff looking. There's no impact. The combat just looks just so generic and bland. And Silent Hill 2 it's a masterpiece of atmosphere and tone and storytelling. Action-wise, it's fine. I mean, it's fine. It's serviceable, right? But it's also, you have to look at it through the era in which it was made, right?
Of course, of course.
The idea of a remake or a remaster should be elevating the things that should be elevated and keeping the things that still work. And the atmosphere and the tension of Silent Hill and the story, of course, and everything wrapped up in Silent Hill 2, that should remain. But you can definitely have give the shotgun a little more oomph, right? You can make the bat swings that go pip, pip, pip. Come on, y'all.
It's a wiffle ball bat.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one thing to take arguably the greatest survival horror video game that's ever been made, and then you make a remake of it, and the trailer, instead of focusing on what made that game amazing, which was the storytelling, which was the atmosphere, which was the creepiness. Instead, it's like, hey, let's swing a bat. Let's focus on the action. Let's try to make it look like a Resident Evil remake, and we'll get the Resident Evil people over on our side. That's completely the wrong way to approach it, and it's a misunderstanding of the IP to begin with. Mm-hmm. And kind of like the article wraps up towards the second half, it seems like Konami no longer understands this IP. Because you've got Silent Hill Ascension, which was a dumpster fire because you had to buy points so that you could vote on what happened. And then there was all these complaints about the dialogue is so terrible. Did they use AI to write it? And Konami is, no, we didn't use AI. I was like, are you sure? Because the Jam Man says otherwise. And then you have Silent Hill: The Short Message, which was supposed to be the short experimental thing. But what is historically made Silent Hill great is that you've got horror things like up front, it's dark, it's creepy, there's monsters, like that's what's on the surface. But what makes it great underneath is the subtle storytelling and the way the horror, the emotional horror kind of weaves in slowly. It's not in your face like the monsters. You have to uncover it. And that is what stays with you long after the monsters have been bashed into the ground. But with The Short Message, there was no horror. There were no monsters. It's just right in your face like, oh, look at this poor girl. Her life is so terrible. And just trying to go for shock value right off the bat. It was so bad and so poorly written and so on the nose. I really think that whoever's in charge of Silent Hill now has no idea what it really is or why it was successful.
And furthermore, I wonder if we are in an era where a good Silent Hill game can actually exist. Can we have a small game that's atmospheric and tells those deeply personal stories by a AAA studio that needs to make X amount of dollars and needs to check off X amount of checkboxes on a list of features, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if we just can't have that anymore in the AAA space, because you can certainly have it in the indie space. There's lots of great indie survival horror games.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, in the indie space, you can have that because you can aim small, miss small. But in the AAA space, much like we're going to talk about later on in our conversation in a different headline, I don't know if you can just do it anymore.
So what happens now if Silent Hill 2 remake is a complete dud or they miss the mark? So now you have 3 recent Silent Hill releases that just the fans are not really hyped about. They played it, they're mixed reviews, mostly negative. What do you do with the IP at that point? Do you admit defeat and give it to somebody else and let them try?
No, I mean, that's a good question because they do have that upcoming game still, Silent Hill F, which is the one that's set in Japan, created by Ryu Kishio 7, who was the famous Japanese visual horror novelist. So that one, I suppose, has a chance of being maybe more like the indie game style of horror. But yeah, I think that Silent Hill 2 is going to sell like gangbusters. The remake is going to sell like gangbusters because it's Silent Hill 2, so everybody's going to want to check it out. Mm-hmm. But whether it has longevity depends on whether it's good or not.
And I will say, my brother, Silent Hill 2 is probably my brother's favorite game of all time. It'll make, if it's bad, his copy, his original PS2 complete inbox copy that he bought of the era is gonna still be pricey and still be worth a lot of money.
So he'll be happy no matter what.
If nothing else, he still has a little gold mine on his hands there. He would never part with it. I know that for a fact. He would never part with this. Don't even ask.
From PC Gamer, after years of anonymity, gaming's least famous but most recognizable voice has broken cover to chat PEGI 18 and his €200 paycheck. If you've ever watched a game trailer in Europe, you've almost certainly heard Richard Wells' voice. He is, in his own words, the guy who says PEGI 18 on all of your video games, which is to say he's the smooth baritone that lets you know a game's age rating right before its trailer plays.
PEGI 18.
He's ubiquitous, but until he became a TikTok sensation, anonymous. And it turns out he only made €200, about $214 for his work. I've been a professional voice actor for 40 years, explains Wells at the beginning of his first video on TikTok. I've made at least 10,000 recordings and spoken millions of words. But ironically, I'm best known for just two. Those two are, of course, PEGI 18, which have been at the front of almost every game trailer for years upon years. Alas, that didn't translate to incalculable riches. In a follow-up video, Wells thanked fans for his newfound virality and answered probably the most common question he gets. Do I get paid every time I say it? Well, I wish. I actually did get paid €200 back in September 2009, and that's all the money I've ever made from it. But Wells is pretty chipper about it anyway. The result is I've got, 2 million friends, which is great, said Wells, enlisting everyone who liked his original video into a faction he's calling the PEGIs. This actually isn't the first time Wells has broken cover. He released a video on his YouTube channel all the way back in 2020 about his role as the PEGI 18 guy, but it was only his recent TikTok videos that catapulted him to internet stardom. What is PEGI?
It's the rating system in Europe.
Okay.
Everyone in Europe, all of your European listeners will all be sitting there throwing things at their
absolutely.
various devices that they listen to the show on. I did not know he became a TikTok sensation. That's pretty cool. Good for him.
Yeah. I think we should start uncovering all the people who did these like short but ubiquitous voice clips, like whoever was the guy who yelled Sega.
Yes, let's find him. Let's have him on the show.
Mm-hmm. I am on it. I'm going to write that down. I have just the show for you to do that sort of interview. Find a pen.
I wonder about this particular contract. I'm pretty sure it's just like we need somebody with a smooth voice to come in and read this one line. And that's probably all this was. He was a contractor. He comes in. He says, okay, we're going to pay you €200. All we need to do is just say this line. PEGI 18. They're like, ooh, that's nice. Okay, done. We're done. We're done here. That's a day's work. You did it in 10 minutes. Let's go. Here's your money. And bam. They don't tell them anything else. They don't tell them what they need it for. And the next thing you know, for decades, you hear your voice stamped on video games all over the place. And you're like, man, I think I should have set something up in a contract where I actually get maybe 10 cents every single time that this is said, or $1 or €1 every single time. I'd say that's a missed opportunity.
I don't know. It's kind of interesting because essentially he made €100 per word, right? Which seems like a pretty good rate.
Yeah. And we also,
of course.
And I don't think, I know very little about how contracts of voice actors go. I think this does lead into a different conversation if voice actors are paid appropriately, which of course the answer is going to be no, because money rules and everything else, boo. But I think this is just a common thing in that industry. He got paid to do a line. They now own that line, and then they use it for whatever they want. I don't know if royalties are really a thing at that level. I honestly don't know. It's funny, when I was doing a casting call for my Final Fantasy series, I got a few responses or likes or whatever from people, from voice actors, because they search for a casting call online. They see that and then they respond to it. It's like, oh, no, I'm not paying people to be on my dumb podcast.
Not that kind of casting
Not
call.
that casting call. But it was interesting because I actually started listening to a lot of these voice actors. Like, oh, I'm curious what their work is. And man, those people hustle for gigs. They hustle. And they do some of them do really great work. And there is a thing now with AI and everything else going on that's pushing those people out of jobs. This does raise the question, should this person have been compensated more than $200 for his hours worth of work doing that recording? And who knows, he could have done other things during that time. He could have had like a script of things to read. Who knows what's behind that? But it is a shame that it's someone who's literally the voice of a over 18 rating in England or Europe didn't see another cent from it after that. But I just wonder if that's just the nature of the industry. It's just how it is.
I think it might be the nature of the industry because especially moving forward, it's a short phrase. It doesn't require any special inflection or emotion or any acting whatsoever. You just read it. This is exactly the kind of stuff that AI will do from now on.
Yep.
So you can say that, well, he didn't get compensated appropriately, but it's a fine line now because if voice actors want more money for stuff like this, was like, it will take us 10 seconds to get an AI to read it and it will be just fine. So it's a sticky situation now, but at least he did it in 2009 and is able, even if he didn't get money out of it, if he's able to have a successful TikTok career and people are interested in him because of this nostalgia of hearing his voice year after year after year associated with the excitement of upcoming games and new breaking game trailers, I think that's pretty good.
And the other thing here is that Richard doesn't sound like he doesn't look like he's all that bent out of shape about not being compensated for continually using his voice on this thing.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And according to the article, he's done 10,000 recordings, millions of words. So he's a professional. He's been doing this for 40 years. He has a long career. So I think it's just a cute, feel-good story of somebody who's getting a little TikTok fame because of their little voice acting thing they did 20 years ago. So
yeah.
All right, let's take a look at our top 3 new releases for the week.
Our first release is Mario vs. Donkey Kong, released on the Switch this week. Donkey Kong has stolen all the mini Mario toys from the factory, and it's up to Mario to get them back. Run, jump, and backflip your way to retrieving them across 130 levels in this puzzle-style twist on classic platforming action. The rivalry that originally heated up on the Game Boy Advance system returns on the Nintendo Switch system with newly added co-op play, brand new worlds, updated music and visuals, and other new ways to play. Banishers Ghosts of New Eden for PS5, Xbox Series X/S, and PC. Hunt ghosts as 2 memorable characters in a story-driven action RPG where your decisions carry dramatic consequences. Torn between honoring your oath to the living and saving your departed partner, how far will you go for love? By exploring New Eden, you will find ancient artifacts, trinkets, and valuable resources to enhance your equipment in preparation of future fights. In addition to your arsenal, progress in skill trees to update devastating spectral powers and unseal new combos.
If you want to know how far I will go for love, you got to listen to the uncut.
And I will do anything for love.
But I won't do that.
But I'll listen to the uncut. Skull and Bones for the PS5, Xbox Series X/X. What? Stadia?
No, that's got to be a joke.
That's a misprint.
The list said Stadia. I put Stadia.
It's coming back.
Rip Stadia. And PC. Enter the perilous world of Skull and Bones, where you play by your own rules to rise from a nobody to become the most fearsome pirate kingpin. As a pirate, your reputation means everything. Grow your infamy and gain access to more resources and opportunities as you complete a variety of contracts from vendors, local factions, and kingpins to build your smuggling empire. Through your journey, you will face many dangers, from unpredictable weather, dangerous rogue waves, to deadly wildlife and cutthroat pirate hunters. Everything and everyone wants you dead. Which of these games are you most looking forward to? Blue, start with you.
So, interestingly enough, the Blue household has actually already bought all 3 of these games.
Whoa!
Wow.
Yes, Mr. Blue over the weekend was playing the Skull and Bones open beta and really, really enjoyed it. So he went ahead and pre-ordered the game and is very excited to make the biggest pirate ship possible and steal all the loot and sink all the other ships, and has been having a blast with it. When I was watching him play it, it kind of just looks like your typical Ubisoft stuff. You know exactly. If you've played a Ubisoft game before, you know what you're going to get with Skull and Bones. It's just pirate-flavored Assassin's Creed. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, when it's a puzzle platformer, over 130 levels, yep, I'm in. I'll go ahead and hit the pre-order on that one. Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden, again, kind of looks like your typical third-person action RPG stuff, but there was something about the story in the trailer that got me interested, and I kind of want to see where you can go with that. So my birthday was this past weekend, so I took some of my birthday gift cards, and I pre-ordered both of those 2 games.
So which one are you going to be playing first? Like, out of the 3, if they all 3 came at the same time, which one would you be picking up first?
Well, Skull and Bones I'm not playing out of principle because it's Ubisoft.
Taking a stand. I love it.
I'm going to give a non-committal answer because I feel like Banisher's Ghost of New Eden is something that I want to sit down and spend some time with, but Mario vs. Donkey Kong seems like the kind of thing you can jump in and out of real fast. So probably this weekend, I have a lot of things going on, so I'll probably be playing Mario vs. Donkey Kong.
Nice. What about you, Donnie?
So Banisher's Ghosts of Eden, I saw the trailer. Like Blue said, it just looks like it's a, your run-of-the-mill action adventure game. I don't know too much about the story. I didn't really listen to the trailer. I just watched it. So it does kind of look like you're back in Pilgrim times or something like that. I'm not really sure. Maybe we're in a different setting, I'd probably go out and pick it up, but we'll just have to see on this one. Skull and Bones, I'm interested in, but not so much that I'm running out to pick it up day one. I've seen some of the gameplay. I'd like to maybe sit down and play like a good 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, to get kind of familiar and see if I like it. I'm still up in the air on this one. Mario versus Donkey Kong. Took a look at the trailer. It looks right up my alley. You've got puzzle solving. You've got Mario, who looks very, very awesome. He looks just like he was out of Super Mario Brothers Wonder, which was such a great game. I think the visuals are stunning. I love puzzle games like this, and I think this one is going to be my choice for the week.
Nice. What do you think, Bill?
I'm in the same boat as Donnie. I am Team Mario versus Donkey Kong. Ever since I saw the trailer for it, I think it was during a Nintendo Direct, I was like, yes, 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 hooray, hooray. I don't get excited for much things. I've learned to quell excitement because I'm going to be disappointed. But this is one of this, because I don't want to be disappointed. Life's full of disappointments. I don't need to create things for myself to be disappointed about. But I'm really looking forward to this. And I really love the original Donkey Kong 94 on Game Boy. Adore that game. And I never played the advanced ones. I didn't know they existed until maybe like last year, when probably this trailer came up. I'm like, wait, this was a series? Huh. I heard they vary in quality, but I'm really looking forward to this. Just like you said, Donnie, it looks great. And the puzzle solving and the platforming puzzle solving, just really right up my alley. Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden, I didn't even look at the trailer for this, to be perfectly honest. So I don't have I kind of ran out of time this afternoon. I'm sorry. But Skull and Bones seems interesting, but pirates are not my thing. I don't know. I can't do big games right now. So I think Mario versus Donkey Kong is right up the alley. And I think that'll be a good time.
All right, let's move on to our main topic for the evening.
All right, from Games Radar, EA flop Immortals of Aveum reportedly cost around $125 million. Former dev says a AAA single-player shooter in today's market was a truly awful idea. In August of last year, Ascendant Studios developer Aaron, whose name was changed for anonymity, was ready to take a well-deserved victory lap. He had crunched hard with many of his colleagues in the final sprint to complete Ascendant's debut game, Immortals of Aveum, and the team had finally done it. He attended a launch party in the Bay Area where he celebrated with his colleagues, some of whom he said had to pay partially out of pocket to make the trip. But while the event was supposed to be jubilant, there was an uneasy atmosphere. It seemed like Immortals of Aveum wasn't performing especially well. At the party, developers kept asking leadership how the game was doing, only to be met with non-committal answers. A few weeks later, almost half of the studio, Aaron included, had been laid off, with managers citing Immortals of Aveum's underperformance. A new report shed some light on just how much EA invested in its single-player FPS, Immortals of Aveum, which received mixed reviews and was deemed a financial flop. Immortals of Aveum launched in August 2023 amidst one of the busiest years of game releases in history, bookended by behemoths like Diablo 4, Starfield, and Baldur's Gate 3. Ascendant Studios' self-styled Call of Duty with Magic experiment was compelling enough, but it ultimately missed EA's expectations by enough of a margin that about 45% of the studio's workforce was laid off shortly after release.
The studio's CEO, Brett Robbins, has gone on record to blame Immortals' poor sales on last year's extraordinarily busy release calendar, but an anonymous former Ascendant employee speaking to IGN said that actually the concept of the game itself and its sizable budget were both fundamental mistakes and ultimately doomed the project. At a high level, Immortals was massively overscoped for a studio's debut project, the former employee said. The development cost was around $85 million, and I think EA kicked in $40 million for marketing and distribution. Sure, there was some serious talent on the development team, but trying to make a AAA single-player shooter in today's market was a truly awful idea, especially since it was a new IP that was also trying to leverage Unreal Engine 5. What ended up launching was a bloated, repetitive campaign that was far too long. Another anonymous employee, still at Ascendant, told IGN that there was potential in Immortals' old-school approach, but admitted it failed to find an audience regardless. It's not a sequel or a remake. It doesn't take 400 hours to beat, has 0 microtransactions, no pointless open-world grinding. Although not everyone loved it, it reviewed pretty well, currently sitting at a 74 on OpenCritic and a mostly positive on Steam. No one bought it. The studio was composed of a number of industry veterans, the employee continued, and was predicted to do well by multiple publishers. But sales were only a tiny fraction of what was projected, and because of that failure, nearly 50 people lost their jobs.
Our source pointed out that when layoffs happen, a common refrain on social media is that greedy CEOs should take pay cuts or that employees should unionize. And while the source said both suggestions are often good ones generally, neither can guarantee every job will be saved. Ascendant's CEO salary, they said, wasn't big enough to have made a difference if cut, and while a union could have improved severance or even saved some jobs, it would not have helped Immortals of Aveum sell more copies. There's plenty of layoffs due to gross mismanagement and greed. Looking at you, Embracer. But there's also plenty that happen because this is a stupidly volatile market that requires mountains of capital to participate in at a professional studio level. For all the things Ascendant did right, paying people well, an entirely remote studio, little overtime until the end, chill environment with lots of freedom to grow, respecting QA, hiring juniors, etc., it did not work out, end quote. Of course, many games have red flags flying about their eventual underperformance well before launch. Nevertheless, publisher deadlines, funding limitations, and other factors can lead to studios pushing games out the door to cut their losses. But those games are releasing into a market that is becoming increasingly unforgiving for games that are simply fine. And when those imperfect, merely adequate games fail, developers inevitably lose their jobs. Downer today, guys. Downer. My first thought was the first time I heard about this game was reading this a couple hours ago. $40 million on marketing, and I had heard. And I live in this world, and I had not heard of this game. Have you heard of this game? Because this is a new one for me.
Yeah,
Yes.
we covered it on the show.
Oh, you did? Okay, I must have missed that one then. Okay.
Yeah, it was the description and everything did not make either one of us want to run out and play this game. Really, in all reality, the quality control, in my opinion, has failed here. You have market research, you have QA sessions, you have people who come in and do test runs of the game, you have focus groups. And ultimately, didn't those focus groups tell you that this was just like, we're not interested. This doesn't really tickle my fancy. When you put this up against something like Call of Duty or Overwatch or what have you, or any of the myriad of first-person shooter games out there, and this one just seems to fall flat. Why did you continue to go on with production of this game?
Well, again, it's their debut game. They've already spent a gazillion hours in it. By the time you get to the focus group point, how much can you really change?
I see what you're saying, but the amount of money it's then going to take, you just cut your losses. Any good business person would say, you know what, we cut our losses right here, because if we continue to put any more money into this game, we're not going to get anything back. Or
you say, you know what, we know these focus groups, they had a lot of criticisms about it, but we have faith in it. We have faith in our developers. We're just going to go, and we think it'll be better than they think it will be.
Right.
Maybe they were just optimistic.
Maybe we just haven't reached the right person or the right people with our focus groups.
Right. Exactly.
And I think we always tend to think that studio CEOs and any CEO in general is just talking lies upon lies every time they open their mouth.
Usually.
But I think there could be some credence in this. It was just a bad year to release this game. This last year, 2023, was one of the best years on record as far as games. This was a crowded year for quality games. And I don't think it was a bad idea to make a AAA first-person shooter game that doesn't have microtransactions, that's more of an old-school design. I don't think that was a mistake. It just probably was just bad luck that this game didn't have the audience. Everyone was playing Baldur's Gate. Everyone was playing Starfield. And those games were taking up all of the space in people's wallets. So this may have just been a situation of bad timing. My question when I hear these stories of layoffs isn't the layoffs themselves, because in the world of business, most people listening to this show are adults. We realize that business is business, right? And when things don't sell, unfortunately, people get laid off. In my everyday job, we've been going through layoffs quite a bit over the last couple of years. But I tend to almost kind of believe Mr. Robbins in this, that, yeah, it may be a perfectly fine game, but just in an extremely crowded space. And when you have funding from other places, they expect an ROI as soon as possible. They're not going to wait a year for you to sit on your game, let the technology increase. Oh, we need more money to keep up now. Sometimes you just got to release it. And I think it is a bad luck situation. And I don't even know if the game's any good, but it definitely was in a crowded market.
Sony came out earlier this week and said that they have no major first-party AAA releases planned until at least 2025. Because they put out Horizon Forbidden West, they put out God of War Ragnarok, and now they're kind of between projects. And so it's like you were saying, Bill, with so many games releasing last year, I feel like if Immortals of Aveum had just waited and released this year instead, when the biggest thing coming out is probably like, I don't know, Star Wars Outlaws, they would have had a much better chance of getting an audience. And when I first watched the trailer, I thought it looked fun. Honestly, I didn't buy it because I don't play first-person shooters, but I was thinking, if I did, this looks like the kind of first-person shooter that I might consider fun, because I hate the online play. But when you think about people who like first-person shooters, that's what they like. That's what gives those games longevity, is the ability to go online and compete against other people. It's a genre that just kind of doesn't work with single player anymore. And so what I think is the most sad thing about this, besides the studio's debut project failing, besides the developers losing their jobs, is the fact that I feel like other studios will take the wrong lesson from this. They'll say, see, single player without microtransactions, it fails. Not looking a little bit deeper, like maybe it was an odd combination of genres. Maybe it was bad timing. Single player games still do well, but a failure like this makes people not want to continue to risk on them.
In my opinion, it's not going to keep people from continuing with first-person shooter story-driven games. Like we just saw the new Ken Levine project that's coming out that's BioShock-esque. So when I think of those types of games, first-person shooter, single player, that's what I think of, BioShock. So you guys make a point about how Immortals of Aveum, it could have waited. They had so many different games that they had to go up against last year that's probably the reason why they didn't do well. Those games have been out. People have been playing them. Maybe they want to go on to something new. I would say if the game was interesting enough, then more people would probably pick it up now, still at a heavily discounted price, and the game would do well. But it's not. So what does that say?
Like it kind of says, it may just be a pretty meh game. I mean, there's meh games released all the time, every week.
Mm-hmm.
Half the time, there are picks for what we want to play in the top 3 new releases. Most games just don't do that well. But that's the risk when you're going to have such a huge development budget. Then you can't afford to have these failures. If you make this game for half the price, this wouldn't be an article. Yeah, they might have still had to make some changes to their staffing and adjust the way that they approach their next game, but it wouldn't have been nearly such a massive failure without them sinking a gazillion dollars into it.
Well, and I'm looking at the Steam reviews right now, and the recent reviews and all reviews are all mostly positive. So you've got a game that came out last year, mostly positive reviews, and now we're seeing it 60% off discount. A game that cost $60 whenever it first came out, you could pick it up for $23.
That's probably where it should have been priced originally. But again, this is a new studio with backing from all these different places, and you can't do that. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Silent Hill. Is there space in the AAA sector for smaller games that are a little more old school, that don't have all those components? And to keep in mind too, though, this game could find its audience in a year or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is the year for this game, because now it's $25. There's not much coming out. People say, oh, you know what? For $25, absolutely. I make those decisions all the time. That's why I don't play my Switch often, because Nintendo games are never on sale. Damn it. I very rarely buy games at full price. I very rarely. I'll wait until they're discounted, because it's just my personal finances. That's how I have to do it. But this sounds like a game that, $25 on a Steam sale. Sure, why not? That sounds like fun. $60, maybe not. And yeah, I think it's just an unfortunate reality of where we are as far as games go. I agree with you, Blue, though. I really hope developers keep following their passions and taking risks and not clicking off the check boxes that they know are going to be profitable. Again, I think it comes down to this aim small, miss small mentality that large studios, and this doesn't sound like a large studio, pretty big, but had backing, that large studios can't really do anymore. We can't afford to have a game that's meh. Because honestly, I have plenty of games I love that are 7 out of 10s. I say it all the time on my show. Play the 7 out of 10s. If it's $15, $20, and it sounds interesting enough, play it. Go for it. Why not? Right? Mm-hmm. I think you can find those joys. Not everything has to be a 9 out of 10. I just don't know if there's room in the AAA space for games that aren't 9 out of 10s.
Well, I think what this year and last year have shown is that there's not even room in the AAA space for the 9 out of 10s.
Yeah.
All the layoffs are showing that these margins just don't work. And you can say that this margin didn't work here because Immortals of Aveum didn't sell well. And that's true. But there's plenty of games that sell crazy, and the studios still end up laying off people because the current formula of AAA games is just not working anymore. So I think the blame here, it lies on several levels, and the video game industry as a whole has to accept some of it, because it's been this kind of arms race of who can spend the most money on a game.
Right.
Obviously, that has got to change, and quickly.
Bill, you did say this is our year. Are you a Cubs fan by chance?
No, I am not. Is that a baseball team? I think it's a baseball. Right?
It is a baseball team.
Okay. It's a sports ball team.
Cubs fans are constantly saying, "This is our year, man. This is our year."
Cubs fans say it, and Cowboys fans say it.
Oh, living in Texas, that was kind of delicious and fun. That was kind of great. Sorry, Cowboys fans. I don't really have a stake in it, but
I'm not.
All right, before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast. The show explores the history of video games through the stories and experiences of the everyday people who lived it. Bill, what's going on in the show right now?
Well, lots are going, and thank you as always for doing the sponsor spot. You guys do a great job with it. So I just want to publicly state I do listen to every show, and I listen to the sponsor spots, and I'm always I'm always impressed. You guys do a great job with it. So thank you for doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a problem. I'm just curious. Will I get a slight discount this month because I'm doing my own spot and not relying? Am I going to get like a little bit of a? I mean,
yeah, we'll give you a 20% off.
Yeah, exactly. Give me like a Steam sale thing going on, a coupon. I don't know.
We've got to check with the Gamers Week podcast legal department, which we stated a couple weeks ago is only open for 5 minutes on Sunday evening. So we'll get back with you on that one.
Man, all right, that's fine. I'll wait a couple of years. It's all good. So Gamer Looks at 40. There's a lot going on with the show right now. I did a little math for you guys before coming on here. I am currently recording interviews for a huge Final Fantasy series. I did a very similar series a year and a half ago with Legend of Zelda. I went through every single Legend of Zelda numbered game. With some had multiple episodes attached to it. Majora's Mask has 3 episodes associated with it. Some games had 2, some have 1. I'm doing the same thing for Final Fantasy, and that is launching on March 4th. Starting in this month alone, January and February, we're 2 weeks into February, I've conducted 21 interviews in the last 6 weeks. I am doing like 3 a day sometimes. And that's just going to be the first round for the first 4 or 5 games in the series. So when
I can't believe you had time to be a guest host.
My wife has not seen much of me, and luckily we work from
Valentine's Day.
Luckily we work from home, so we do see each other in passing. But it's So it's going to be a huge project. These episodes are going to be big. Detail. There's a lot of great stories. And even if you don't like Final Fantasy, which is the risk when I do these things, that I'm going to alienate people who hate Final Fantasy. I was talking with somebody the other day who was like, oh, I'm not going to listen to any of your Final Fantasy things because I hate Final Fantasy. I'm like, you know what? I really do alienate a good portion of my listenership because there's probably people who don't care for 4 months. I'm also bringing back Tales from the Bargain Bin, which are those smaller side shows where we just talk about certain games we got as kids. So even if you don't like Final Fantasy, please stay tuned to the show because we are going to have those. And I think I'm going to do a little announcement. I'm so excited about this. I haven't announced it yet. I'm going to do it right here on Gamers Week. I had the very good fortune of interviewing just yesterday Arnie Roth. He is the composer of and conductor of the Distant Worlds series. If you're a Final Fantasy music fan, that is the live orchestral series that he's been doing for 16 years now, I think.
Wow.
And I had a conversation with him yesterday about Distant Worlds, about some of the stuff that's coming up, about his history with it, about video game music. And it was awesome. So that is going to be one of the big features that will be coming out probably in March, right soon after the first couple episodes. I'll be launching that one. Super stoked. So that is
that's exciting.
Yeah, super excited about that. It's a really fun interview and a good get, as they say in my world.
I own 4 albums of Distant Worlds music.
He tells stories of working with Uematsu, and it's really, really a cool conversation, if I do say so myself.
Wow, I cannot wait.
It's going to be I'm very excited about it. So if you know people who like Final Fantasy, or if you like Final Fantasy, A Gamer Looks at 40 is going to be your spot for probably at least 3 months. And then after that, I have a couple more ideas for series. Definitely going to do Metroid at some point. And I have such a heart for this little dumb console called the Wii, and I have to do a series on the Wii because I know there's going to be so many good stories around that. So yeah, that's going to be the year, I guess. And so thank you for giving me the chance to talk about it. And I am super stoked. GamerLooksAt40.com.
Awesome. And don't forget to check out the show notes because we'll have all of Bill's links and you can dive into the past episodes and get caught up. All right, students, everybody please sit down and shut up. I left my Super Nintendo paused and you never know what could happen, so let's make this quick. I am Podcast Daddy Blue, your substitute for today, and this is Gaming History 101. Obviously, Professor Rybread isn't here, but he did leave his lesson plans. So today we will be discussing defunct retail stores that did sell video games even though they weren't strictly video game stores. In the United States, in the early years of gaming, video game stores were mostly one of 2 things, either a mom-and-pop shop that sold video games or a gaming department within a much larger store. It wasn't until the video game craze really took off in the mid to late 80s that we started to see stores like Electronics Boutique, Babbage's, or Funko Land begin that were primarily focused on gaming. However, today's lecture won't be on the stores dedicated solely to video games, but the places that you could pick up computer parts, toys, electronics, etc. while shopping for your next favorite games. Join us as we pour out a little beer for our fallen friends and discuss why these places ultimately failed. So first up, we have Circuit City. Founded in 1949 in Richmond, Virginia, and originally called Ward's Company, Circuit City started its business to capture the TV craze that was sweeping across the southern states in the U.S. Eventually becoming a powerhouse in the electronics market, the company changed their name to Circuit City in 1984 and began building superstores. You could tell it was a Circuit City from miles away by the big red facade erected on the front of every store that looked like the top of a power plug. Now, what's interesting about Circuit City is that it didn't really get into the video game market until the 90s, when it signed an exclusive deal with Sony to sell only PlayStation games. Circuit City's original model consisted of knowledgeable commissioned salespeople, which became part of their brand, as customer service was a big focus for the company. However, in the 2000s, it struggled to keep up against competitors like Best Buy and eventually switched to low-paid hourly staff, resulting in a serious downturn in their customer service. Eventually filing bankruptcy in 2008 and liquidating stores in 2009, Circuit City went the way of the dodo. But hey, at least they sold a lot of portable CD players with 60-second anti-skip, so they got that going for them, which is nice.
Yes. Professor, what's a CD?
Oh, God, get out of my classroom.
Fine.
Next up is Fry's Electronics. Founded in 1985 in Sunnyvale, California, because of course, Fry's gained popularity for its vast product selection, large retail spaces, and themed store layouts that included elaborate decorations. Fry's Electronics offered a wide range of products, including electronics, appliances, software, and components, attracting both consumers and tech enthusiasts. In fact, it was one of the few stores that offered computer components for people to build their own PCs from scratch, even selling outdated parts for someone looking to restore old tech. They had in-store computer repair services and staff that could build PCs for you at your request. Selling software from all different platforms, from PC to console gaming, it was truly an experience for the electronics and gaming lover. However, Fry's Electronics faced challenges in the retail landscape, including increased competition from online retailers like Amazon. Seeing a pattern? The company struggled with inventory issues, often having empty shelves and outdated products, mostly because that's all that was left. In February 2021, Fry's Electronics abruptly announced the closure of all its stores, citing challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and changes in the retail industry. The closure was unexpected, leaving customers and employees surprised. The company's failure was attributed to a combination of financial difficulties, changing consumer shopping habits, and the inability to adapt to the evolving retail landscape. And just like Kaiser Soze.
I swear I almost did a Usual Suspects one, but I figured it would be a bit, but I figured it'd be a little too obscure. Kaiser Soze.
Wow.
I can tell I've disappointed you. Moving on.
I'm glad you're just a temp.
Fry's Electronics was gone. #blame Bezos. And then lastly, CompUSA. Founded in 1984 in Addison, Texas as Soft Warehouse, nice pun, the store quickly gained success and in just 4 years began expanding nationally with the introduction of superstores. Changing its name to CompUSA in 1991, it focused mostly on selling computers and computer-related products. Its selection of boxed PC games rivaled almost any store out there at the time, making it a real hub for your average PC gamer. It was also one of the first companies to utilize the internet for e-commerce, starting CompUSA.com in 1996. Looking to expand their business model, they even offered customer service for software publishers and OEMs in 1998. Its biggest competitor was Best Buy in the 2000s, and it attempted to roll out several services that were already being offered by Best Buy, including rewards programs for frequent purchases and in-store tech support. Despite attempts to diversify, it became stretched too thin as a result of consumer shifts to e-commerce from brands like Amazon. CompUSA filed for bankruptcy in 2007 and closed many of its stores. The remaining stores were purchased by SystemX, but the brand struggled to regain its footing. Ultimately, in 2012, CompUSA announced the closure of its remaining stores, marking the end of its presence in the retail market. The bank was like, all your assets belong to us. God, Ryan.
Well done, Ryan. Well done.
So in summation, despite the failure of these 3 stores, frequent customers of these places and many others still have nostalgia for walking into a retail space, seeing all the amazing displays, and spending their time checking out the cool gadgets and gizmos these places had for sale that most people could never afford. While the convenience of shopping online can't be disputed, the experience at places like these 3 are still missing for a lot of us old folks. So you guys remember getting games at any of these stores?
Circuit City, I did not go to for games. I had Best Buy here in the St. Louis area. That was my go-to place for video games. It wasn't Target, it wasn't Walmart, it wasn't Kmart, Venture, any of the many different places, the big box stores here. It was Best Buy. And Best Buy had the greatest selection of video games and PC games too. The big box PC games, Best Buy and CompUSA, those were the 2 big places to go to for those. So I definitely have fond memories of big places like that, like shopping malls and big box stores, going and looking at the aisles of video game stuff that they have, which they still have today, but it's very lackluster, not as dominant as it used to be back in the 90s.
I didn't have a Fry's. I grew up in northern New Jersey, and Fry's does not exist on the East Coast, at least where I grew up. So
I'm not sure where it exists, honestly, because I've never heard of it.
Yeah, they were in Texas. So when I moved to Texas in 2013, Fry's was a thing here. I did have Circuit City and Best Buy. Circuit City was my jam. I spent many a dollar buying CDs and games and car stereo equipment. When I was in college, I was really into systems for my car. I had this 1989 Geo Spectrum. It was this tiny little, nothing car sedan that had like a bazooka bass tube in the trunk and Pioneer 4-way 6x9s and a fancy thing, the deck, the radio, the head unit, as they call it. Mm-hmm. I bought all that at Circuit City. Circuit City is where I got car audio gear. Until one sad day, the bass hit really hard. I hit a bump at the same time, and my entire exhaust system fell out of the bottom of the car. And that was it. It was like a combination of 3 things. Boom, and that was it for my exhaust. Left behind in the middle of Newark, New Jersey. My exhaust, and I just kept on going because I'm not stopping in Newark to get my exhaust system.
And legend has it, it's still there to this day.
It might be. It might be. It very well could be.
All right. Well, thank you for attending today's Gaming History 101. And just as a reminder, if you have ideas for a story or topic you'd like to hear, send us a message at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com, and we might feature your suggestion.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. Thank you for listening to episode 110 of Gamers Week Podcast, and a big thank you to the Retro Game Club Podcast, Love Retro BTW, and a Gamer Looks at 40 podcast for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Watch us on Twitch at twitch.tv/GamersWeekPodcast. Email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com. Visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com. Or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. Finally, since you made it all the way to the end of this episode, please leave us a rating and a review to let us know how we did. We really do value your feedback. While you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice. Bill, thank you so much for filling in and being a co-host with us this evening. We greatly appreciate that. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody about the podcast again and where they can find you?
The podcast is entitled A Gamer Looks at 40. Again, it's a nostalgic look at the history of video games as told through the stories and lived-in experiences of the people who played it. Both Donnie and Blue and Ryan have all been on the show before. You can check out all of my everything at agamerlooksaat4040.com. And Twitter is where I mainly hang my hat, also at agamerlooksaat4040. And thanks again for having me. This was an absolute blast, as always.
Of course.
And if people are looking for a starting point into Gamer Looks at 40, I highly recommend the episode where Gamers Week guested and we did the live table read of the Zelda comics from 1993.
Give me 2 seconds and I will tell you exactly what the episode that is. I don't know off the top of my head because I do too much stuff.
Who played Princess Zelda in that? I kind of forget.
That's funny because whoever it was, they were a natural at it.
It's as if they do the voice all the time in their spare time.
I tend to agree.
Just for no other reason.
That person should probably get into voice acting.
Probably.
and pay him more than the $200 that PEGI 19 guy got. That was episode 57 of A Gamer Looks at 40. If you want to hear these three lovely people do voices and read a live read of the Zelda comic from Nintendo Power.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Bill. We appreciate it.
Yes, thanks, Bill. Always a good time talking to you.
And with that, we'll see you next week. Have a good night, folks.
Good night.
Cling tenaciously to my buttocks.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, patrons with benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple, and I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VD-STDs things, right? Make it fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
that was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.